Well, our first win of the league campaign there for Lossiemouth, joined as always by Callum and Paul. RAF man, Henry Jordan, he is still an RAF man, isn't he? Aaron's Lossie, their first victory, deserved?
I would say over the piece it was deserved. I think reflected in the highlights as well, I felt they had the better of the chances, and even over the 90 minutes I thought they were just that bit hungrier and a bit sharper. I mean, Wick did play in midweek, got a good 3-2 win against Forest, but they never really seemed to hit those levels. I mean, they had a couple of sort of chances early on with Gordy McNabb. I thought both teams started quite brightly, but then the Scorries kind of fell out of it a fair bit, I thought, after that, and the Coasters sort of took control. And I mean, Henry Jordan, who you mentioned, looks a bit of a find for Lossiemouth. I mean, he's
going to be a player, that boy.
I just think he's, I mean, if you're being critical, he could have probably had a hat-trick on another day, but his sort of touch and his link-up play, and he was sort of playing for the large part sort of in the hole behind Fraser Forbes, and he just sort of gets into good areas and, you know, causes a threat. And I think I saw him, he came on last month against Rothes when we had highlights of their game, and I think just with maybe fitting in a bit more than that, I thought he looked a bit sharper again and was a sort of key component in Lossie's victory.
His finish is top drawer. The touch, and then turn back inside and onto his left, and then the finish on top of it. Perfectly executed from start to finish. Terrific goal.
Gary Manson, on the other hand, wasn't happy. Didn't hold back in his post-match comments.
It's my early favourite post-match interview of the season, I have to say.
I think the biggest thing you can say is he was incredibly honest. Whether there was no sort of bluffing with what he thought about it. But and I agreed with a fair chunk of what he said in terms of second half. They sort of huffed and puffed a bit, and even when the subs came on, like Jack Halliday came on, Mark McGregor came on, and I mean, they're sort of coming back, but even I thought they might have just, with their quality, might have been the players that just sort of sparked something for them, but never really looked like happening. And on the flip side, I think, Frank McGettrick was mentioning, but Ryan Stewart, particularly for Lossie, I thought in the first half was the best player in the park, and he unfortunately went off, as we heard, problem with his ankle just before half time. But I thought the likes of him, Ross Morrison as well, and then Henry Jordan, Forbes, those sort of front four looked a real handful for Lossie, and that's an encouraging sign for them going forward. I mean, they would like to be more clinical in terms of taking more of their chances, but first clean sheet as well. So if you can keep keeping clean sheets, they'll always give themselves a chance.
Locos as well there with their first league win of the campaign. Greg Mitchell's early goal, probably a good nerve settler in that one for Locos.
I think that set the tone. I mean, in fairness, Strathspey, I thought in the first half they created a couple of decent chances. I thought they looked in the game, but I think from their point of view, I would imagine the plan would have been keep it tight early on. You know, Inverurie, they have struggled to score goals this season. They haven't been on a great run of form. I would imagine Robert McCormack would have been wanting first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, keep it tight, don't give anything away, frustrate them, and then probably try and play on that maybe potential wee bit of nervousness. But Captain Greg Mitchell obviously comes up with the opener, and then once it went 2-0, I kind of thought Inverurie controlled it, and you could see probably just bit more confidence come and players playing with a bit more freedom again. And obviously it's 5 goals, clean sheet, first league win, job done really for them.
Callum's spot on. I mean, the pressure was on Inverurie, I think, given the start of the season they've had, and they're at home. Everyone's looking at this one thinking if Strathspey can go to Harlow Park and get a result, this is really going to put a cat amongst the pigeons. But Locos get the early goal, then they get a second, and you can see the handbrake comes off, and it's suddenly a free-flowing Locos, and it's always going to be a case of how many are they going to get after that.
And I mean, even the third goal is early in the second half, and it's the old cliche, but 2-0, if you can go out and get the next goal, for Strathspey, it changes the game. But obviously they don't get it, they lose it, and then I mean, it was a poor goal to lose, as a couple of them were, but that's just what they need to try and cut out.
Okay, moving on to the other games from Saturday then. I think there's only one place we can start. Huntly 4, Fraserburgh 1. If they weren't converted already, I think there'll be a few more Huntly believers potentially after this win. First win over the Broch at Christie Park for 11 years. And it sounded
In the league.
In the league. And it sounded like another show of Huntly's strength at both ends of the park, didn't it? Especially in the last 30 minutes.
I think what we're seeing now is a Huntly team that they've, over probably a couple of years, been building and I think now there's a quality and cohesion right through their side. I mean, even if you look at Saturday's team, Andy Hunter was missing, and you think, well, that give them a problem. He'd scored 7 and 3. Other players have stepped into the breach. In defence, Cameron Heslop was missing, who's played a lot this season. Ross Still slotted in, usually a midfielder, slotted in at centre half, scored, and seems like he's had a good game by all accounts. And I think, like, the way, like it's a, you can say the way it's gone, sort of from Fraserburgh being 1-0 up to 10 minutes later being 3-1 down, you can say that's on Fraserburgh like, but I think that would probably be doing Huntly a slight disservice in the sense of, I think that they've now, with their forward players, as we've seen, they've got this capability to really blitz teams when they're on it, and clearly they were on it. I mean, they've won their last 5 games and they've scored 23 goals, conceded 3, and I mean, that's just outstanding form, regardless of the opposition you've played. That's top form.
And you look at the table, the 2 columns, goals for, goals against, the stack up, against anybody at the moment.
Oh, the black and golds are flying, deservedly so. Fraserburgh, not so much, I have to say. It's been a tough few days for Mark Cowie and his players. A great result in the Highland League Cup semi-final at Breedon, and then back-to-back league defeats. That's a really sore one to take. It's 3 defeats now they've had this season in the league. I know Breedon have got a game in hand. If they win that, that's a 9-point gap. It's already making those 2 head-to-heads with the champions are going to be vital for Mark Cowie's side, and dare I suggest, I think their margin for error is practically 0 from here on in.
I was going to ask that very question.
I do think it's a bit early to be sort of saying teams can win it and can't win it, but I would agree that, and I'm sure they would feel as well, that their margin for error now, if they want to be close to it, it's probably pretty slim. But speaking about contenders, I mean, I'll throw this out there, but is there any reason at the moment why Huntly can't be a contender, or at least be pushing towards that sort of top 4, potentially causing maybe being a sort of surprise package?
You have to say they're genuine contenders.
I've got that written here. They're contenders for me.
They've beaten Fraserburgh, they held Breedon, and they've got goals in their team, and their defence is not too shabby either. Why wouldn't you say they're contenders?
And I think as well, need to labour that point, but the slight thing as well is there is a bit more depth to it as well, because like Hunter and Heslop are 2 that, when they've been available, have basically played just about every minute, and then you take those 2 out and they've still gone and played as well as they have is impressive. And I mean, I would say as well, there seem to be highlights perhaps kicking about online, not ours, but Michael Dangana's goal is worth a watch, certainly.
Well, yeah, just to make it clear, Ryan Sargent opened the scoring for Fraserburgh. Ross Still and Lyle Booth then both scored with headers for Huntly. 25-yard curler from Dangana, and then a chipped finish from Callum Murray to complete the scoring. For Martin 2, Forest Mechanics 0. Another side for Martin, you'd have to say, are title hopefuls, title contenders. They're top of the table after goals early in both halves from Scott Lyle and Mark Lawrence. I mean, I noticed for Martin, when you look at the table, they've played 11 games, which is more than any other side, I think, so far.
That is the wee outlier, isn't it?
I mean, given the way the season's gone so far with postponements this early, I mean, that's a good position to be in, is it, if you can keep that going?
Well, the thing is, you can talk about you've played more games, but it's old again.
Points on the board, isn't it?
You'd rather points on the board than games in hand are fine if you win them, but you'd rather points on the board, and for Martin have done it. And I mean, it seemed not that you're on about the table as well. Not that Stuart's Anderson
No, he made that
says
very
he's
clear.
looking at the table at all. He was quite clear to emphasise that, but or quite keen to emphasise that. But I think Saturday's game very much game of fine lines to an extent. Like Stephen McDonald feels Forrest have played well, but the goals have lost maybe a wee bit soft. And then on the flip side, Ewan McDonald saves a penalty for Ethan Cairns. Mark McLaughlin hits a post when he's through. Those are both at like 2-0, and if you get that goal, it changes the game. But that's the wee difference between maybe sides mid-table and a team like Formartine that's up towards the top end, where in both boxes, more often than not, they're ruthless.
Bankside 2, Clattenacurran 2. Are our interim managers getting a wee bounce at Clattenacurran? Looks like it.
I did not see that one coming, I have to say. It's a terrific result for the Lily Whites. Fair play to come down to Spain Park and come away with a point. It's brilliant.
I mean, it also sounded like in midweek against Brora and losing 2-0, according to our esteemed colleague Paul Chalk, that they were also
battled well.
decent enough in that game too. So that's positive signs for them.
It is. There's probably actually a wee tinge of regret on Saturday at not winning, because they were playing against 10 men for quite a long period and they were in front twice. So on another day, you maybe look and feel that you could come away with the 3 points. But Blair Laurie did also say that, you know, if he'd been offered a point before the game, he would have been quite happy with that. So, you know, it is, at the end of the day, it is a good point for them. For Bankside, I think they're just in too many games, seem to be giving themselves a bit too much to do. Like, you look at Wednesday last week, 3-1 down to Devon Vale. They make a good comeback to get a point out of the game, but I mean, Devon Vale played well and all credit to them, but like, from a Bankside perspective,
they'll feel like it's key points
last week. They've got themselves in a bit of a hole there. Okay, they've come back, and again Saturday, even like Josh Winton was saying afterwards, came back to 1-1 on Saturday, and even with the man less, he felt like they were the team in the ascendancy, could go on and win it. And then he was disappointed with the goal they'll lose to go 2-1 behind again. I mean, they rallied, come back to 2-2, but it just feels like at the moment they sort of always seem to have like a mountain to climb almost, and having to try and make these comebacks and things.
As you say, it's got to be frustrating for Bankside to have beaten Buckie so well, and then I think the last 2 games, Devon Vale and...
Yeah, you've scored 5 goals and got 2 points.
Aye, well that's the thing. But even since in the league, since they beat Buckie, they've had 3 games and they've lost to Breedon with that goal in the last minute, which, you know, they've one way, like you can look with not to go over that whole incident, yes. But either way, it was a game they shouldn't have lost, basically, with how they played. And then, as you've just said, they've scored 5 goals over their last 2 games, and it's only been enough to get 2 points. So that's a bit frustrating for them.
Again, just to clear up what happened in that game, Jevon Anderson was sent off for Bankside's second red card this season, correct? That led to Rory McLeod making it 1-0 to Clark from the pen spot. Mark Gilmore equalised in the second half, but it was quickly 2-1 via Lewis McKenzie. But then Lucky McLeod made it 2-2 in the final 10 minutes to earn a point for his team. Last game we discussed from the weekend, because, you know, it was a condensed card, shall we say. Devon Vale 1, Nairn 3. Ben Kelly, Kieran Young, Fraser Dingwall had capitalised on Nairn's dominance into the second half. By the sounds of things, Mikey Watson with a late strike for Vale that was described as a consolation. Sounds like Nairn were pretty in control in this one.
That seemed to be the general consensus from all sides. I mean, Devon Vale, still that element at times that you don't quite know what you're going to get, and Craig Stewart was making that point in terms of Scottish Cup win at Cooter, and then they've probably should have beat Bankside, but played well last midweek. And then maybe a game where there's perhaps a bit more expectation in terms of them winning or getting a result, and they've fallen a wee bit flat. But I mean, Nairn are a good side as well on their day, and that's them sort of ticking along quite nicely again, back-to-back wins, 15 points for their 10 games, which given the start they had and some of the teams they've played, it isn't a bad return at all. And it's interesting, even the goal, like maybe two of the sort of newer generation sort of getting them up, like Ben Kelly's a summer signing for the North Calley League, and Kieran Young's a young player that they've sort of brought through, and seeing players like that come into the fore is probably a good sign for Nairn going forward as well.
Let's just clear up what happened with the games we were meant to be filming at the weekend. It was obviously rain. One of those games was again meant to be Bro Rangers against Keith, the GPH Builders Merchants Highland League Cup semi-final, once again postponed. What's happening with that competition, given the final was meant to be this Saturday?
Time's a charm.
Well, it's third time lucky, but the final was obviously meant to be Saturday, but the semi-final is now going to be Saturday at Dudgeon Park, and the final will be at Harlow Park at a date yet to be decided. And on Saturday in the league we also lost Bucky against Brechin and Rothes against Turriff due to the waterlogged pitches.
Okay, hopefully that was just a sort of freak weather incident, and the rain and wet weather and cold weather stays off until January.
Fingers crossed, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Let's have a look at the Breedon Highland League standings following the games that did take place at the weekend.